I didn't know whether I could do it or not. To be honest, I hadn't done it in a long time. In other words, made a record for myself. I had done the Lilyhammer score, but it's just it's a different thing. So I wasn't sure what would happen, but about a year into the tour, the ideas started coming, and it's wonderful. I completely credit the band for this because keeping the same band now for almost 3 years. I think in the fall it'll be 3 years. Has been a big difference because it gives you a foundation, underneath, to evolve from. And sure enough, about a year in, I started getting some ideas, and it ended up being a very big artistic breakthrough for me because all my previous records before Soulfire were all very autobiographical and very political. And I really wanted to get away from both things, I was like, I've had enough of me, and politics is just different now. It's very different now. I mean, in the '80s, it was all very hidden. Everything was behind the scenes, and needed to shine some light on some things. Now, it's in your face 24/7. People need a break from it. There's nothing to explain anymore. It's all very obvious what's going on. It's pervasive. I mean, you can't escape it. So I said, my usefulness now is to provide a little sanctuary. Let's give people a break. And at the shows, we take them on a trip for 2 hours and give them a little spiritual nourishment, which I think we all need at this point to face this madness, because we have entered a new dark age. I mean, this is the worst I've ever seen, the worst shape I've ever seen the world in, and I don't see it changing anytime soon either. So I think we're in for a good, I don't know what, 5-10 years of this frenzy of nationalism and combined with religious extremism. I mean, what a combination we have going on right now, And we had bad news from India the other day. We had bad news from Indonesia a week ago. All of the nationalist parties increased in the European vote last night, right? Everywhere. Great Britain, France, Italy, virtually every country. Like I say, when the good guys are in charge and they fuck up, okay, and they don't get the job done, the bad guys walk in, man. And that's what's going on right now. The bad guys are in, and they're going to be in for a while. It's the first time in my life I feel we're going backwards. Obviously, the Vietnam era was a lot of turmoil and a lot of craziness going on there, and there were problems around the world. There were a lot of dictators all through Latin America that my government was supporting. But thank you. But generally speaking, if I look at it from a little distance, I think we've been on a trajectory since World War II to try and unify the world. I mean, and I think that's what we should be doing. You know what I mean? That's the healthy, normal, logical thing to do, isn't it? Let's unify the planet, demilitarize the planet, right? And try and evolve the species. We've stopped evolving as a human race at this point. We need to clean up the environment and live a poison-free life. I'm beyond the climate. I'm into poison-free, period. All right? And, we don't get a chance to spend our time on that. That's what we should be spending our time on, trying to eradicate pollution and poverty and all of the, obvious things. Instead, now, we're going to be stuck in politics, for the entire near future. So the new record was a major breakthrough for me, letting go of the politics, letting go of the autobiographical nature of it, and just doing fiction. fictionalizing the album. 12 little movies. I get to play a different character in each one, and it's nothing but, fun and a lot less pressure, I must say. And this is what it'll be from now on, this kind of a thing. And it's a whole rebirth. I mean, it's an entirely new artistic adventure in front of me now, which is exciting. I honestly, I didn't know if I could do it. You're not sure. 20 years is a long time. Those muscles go to sleep. Maybe they don't wake up. Really. So, again, it was absorbing my own life this past 2 years. Just reconnecting to it really did the job. And this band, I owe it all to the band.
I mean, musically, it's a celebration of life. I mean, musically, it's a very positive record. And lyrically too, but very like a rock and roll mass, like a rock and roll baptism, and you're the high priest standing there. And
well, it really that was the idea was we have to do something positive. I mean, there's no sense whining and complaining about the world right now. I mean, it's just such a mess. Let's do something uplifting. Let's do something hopeful, optimistic. I'm like, how can I do that, right? Without lying. You know what I mean? I mean, I don't want to lie, and say, hey, everything's going to be fine. It's not going to be fine. But I said, let's go back. Let's go back and try and find that place where we were, the romantic fantasy of life was still alive, and that hopefulness and that symbolic nature of spring and summer, which is, the blooming of flowers and crops and all that ritual stuff that's been in religious rituals for forever. Have that happen in our hearts, our souls. Have that looking ahead, with promise. Looking ahead with, you can't wait for the next day to come because it's only going to get better. That feeling of unlimited possibilities and falling in love with life itself and with falling in love with love and that whole romantic fantasy of summer, getting out of school. I said, I'm going to revisit that and see if we can just connect to it somehow. And I tell you the truth, I was wondering how difficult that was going to be to find, how deep is that? It was right below the surface. As soon as I got into it, it's right there. I was like, well, that's interesting. Why is that right there? I'm talking about, in my case, whatever, 40, 50 years ago. How could something like that be so accessible? And I think the reason is because we never get there. We never fulfill that fantasy. It's always there. We suppress it, we denial about it, or we just ignore it, or we don't even remember that it's there, but it's there. And I think it's there in everybody. And the reason why it's there is because that destination that we kind of have in our heads, in a form of romantic fantasy, that destination, we never arrive. We never arrive at. So it's always kind of there, just below the surface. And I thought, I'm onto something here, because I bet you this is a universal truth. And therefore, if we can provide the stimulation, the context, the methodology of getting to that place, even temporarily, it's going to make people feel good, and give them a little hope. It might be temporary, the album's 60 minutes, so you get 60 minutes of hope is better than none. And let's see what happens with it. And it turned out to be extremely positive, and the show is reflecting it now. You'll see tomorrow night. People are responding to the show like nothing I've ever seen. I mean, I have never seen anything like it. Frankly, I thought the Soulfire show, I thought I would never beat it. Because it was my whole life story. Here's a summary of my whole life, right? And I think this beats it somehow. And I'm really happy about that. The crowd has been going nuts over the show. And you never know exactly why, but I think it's connecting in a way that I hoped it would, you know? So, we'll see,
I mean, you've always, because you just mentioned politics and the whole world situation, you've always been not only outspoken, but you've always been very active politically. For example, fighting apartheid with contemporaries of yours. Do you think music still has the power, and rock stars in particular, do still have the power?
Well, yeah, I mean, it certainly it's built into the art form. So you're gonna have the ability to have that wonderful direct communication. That's still there. It may be on a smaller scale. It might be 1-to-1. It might be a song of mine really affects your life personally. The bigger picture, its potential is still there. We don't have. It's much more fragmented world. It's a much more distracted world. So I don't know. I'm not sure how easy it'll be to organize, but look at what the kids are doing right now. I think the next big movement will be environmental. Obviously, it has to be. I think it's happening on a grassroots level, and so it might take. I don't know if all the big stars in the world got together, did something for the environment. Maybe it would catch on, but this Greta Thunberg, this young girl, they're having strikes. Little kids, 10-year-old, 12-year-old, 14-year-old kids are walking out of school on Fridays. I love this. I just love it. We're going to see what specific solutions come into view here. Because I'm very results oriented. You know what I mean? I'm one of those guys that just symbolism is nice. Protests are nice. Demonstrations are nice. What are we actually getting done here in terms of legislation? That remains to be seen, but it's a wonderful start. It really is a wonderful start. So I think that's the next big issue. I take it further than they take it. I mean, they're talking about climate emergency, which there is, totally legitimate, and I'm complete support of them. But I'm into, that doesn't cover plastic, I'm into poison-free environment. 100% poison-free. Okay? Now, you take away, the fossil fuels, obviously. You take away the plastic, you take away the industrial waste, et cetera, I think the climate takes care of itself. You know what I mean? In other words, when you get down to the roots of it, when they talk about climate change, climate emergency, of course they're talking about fossil fuels first, as they should. But that doesn't cover plastic, not technically, So I'm like, at some point we need to expand this thing to poison-free, I don't like using words that can be co-opted or can be compromised or can be denied, like climate change and global warming. I don't use those words. You're going to have some wacko scientist, 1 out of 1,000 who disagrees with you or, whatever. I'm like, poison is my word, Who's in favor of poison? Raise your hand. Okay? You know? Oh, nobody? Oh, okay. Let's start working on that. You know? I'm just that way. I'm like, you know, I'm very results oriented, like I say, and I you know, you got to start with the basics, which is, you know, get rid of the poison.